Gracias y buenas tardes. Thank you to our hosts for inviting me to join you here today. It is great to be with you, and it is great to be back in Argentina. I've had the pleasure of visiting this country twice before as a tourist, and I've seen the beauty of Iguazu and Mendoza, Bariloche and Ushuaia, El Calafate, and of course, Buenos Aires. But this is a trip of firsts. This is my first time in Córdoba. This is the first time I'm in Argentina as chairman of the FCC. And it is also the first time that an FCC chairman has attended the CLT. And after my speech this afternoon, I sincerely hope it will not be the last. I actually thought about delivering my remarks today in Spanish, which is what I did at this year's GSMA in Barcelona. But nobody should have to listen to my Spanish when I'm jet lagged. La próxima vez, quizás, lo siento. But instead, I thought I would open my remarks from a quote from the world's most famous Argentine. And no, I'm not talking about Lionel Messi, especially after what happened yesterday. I'm sorry for Argentina. But no, I'm actually talking about Pope Francis. Last month, the Pope said the following, which I think is fitting for this occasion. The Holy Spirit calls all of us and helps us discover the beauty of being together and journeying together, each in his or her own language and tradition, but happy to be amongst brothers and sisters. It's not just what Pope Francis said that struck me as relevant to this moment, but where he said it. He said it on Twitter. And this message reflects the two themes that I would like to emphasize in my remarks today. One, the importance of using technology to solve our common challenges. And two, the importance of regional collaboration to unlock those solutions. Let me start with point one. It has become cliched to say that the internet has changed everything. But I can think of no better proof of this than the fact that the Vatican has a digital media strategy. Indeed, earlier this year, the Pope introduced a new mobile app called Click to Pray. Promoting digital technologies is not a minor issue. It is essential to every issue that we face as policymakers and citizens. It is essential to economic growth and job creation. It is essential to healthcare and education. It is essential to transportation and agriculture. And yes, it is essential to growing and to sustaining communities of faith. And this raises two important jobs for those of us in this room. First, we need to make sure that everyone in the Americas has access to what I call digital opportunity. As others have probably noted during this conference, around 45% of Latin Americans are still offline. And in the United States as well, we have our own challenges with the digital divide. For example, more than 21 million Americans, mostly in rural areas, still do not have access to high-speed fixed broadband service. As Pope Francis said, how wonderful would it be if the growth of scientific and technological innovation would come along with more equality and social inclusion? I agree with that, and that is why we need to make sure that the digital revolution reaches and empowers those who are struggling to get ahead or simply to catch up. Now, our second job is unleashing next-generation technologies. We want everyone to have access to the internet because of the life-changing services and applications that it enables. And the next big game changer on the horizon is 5G, the fifth generation of wireless technology. As all of you know, 5G will effectively remove speed and capacity and latency as limitations on wireless innovation. 5G can unlock a world in which wireless sensors monitor your health and transmit data to your doctor before problems become emergencies. It can enable smart transportation networks that reduce traffic, prevent accidents, limit pollution, and speed up emergency response times. And it will enable so many more applications and services, most of which we can't even conceive today. How fast these possibilities are realized, or if they are realized at all, will depend in part on whether we enable it to happen. And to realize this potential, the FCC has developed and is executing what we call the 5G FAST plan. That plan has three basic parts. freeing up more spectrum for the commercial marketplace, making it easier to deploy the wireless infrastructure of the future, and modernizing our regulations to promote fiber deployment. And I'll briefly discuss each of these. First, on spectrum, we have been very active this year in making more mid, low, and high band spectrum available for 5G. In January, we finished an auction of spectrum in the 28 gigahertz bands. We awarded almost 3,000 licenses in this band. And just 2 months ago, in May, we finished an auction of 700 megahertz of spectrum in the 24 gigahertz band. And next week, the FCC will take 2 more important steps on spectrum to promote 5G. First, we will vote on the final procedures for an auction of the upper 37, 39, and 47 gigahertz bands, which will start on December 10th. This auction will be the largest in American history, releasing 3,400 megahertz of spectrum into the commercial marketplace. And in total, all of our auctions this year will free up almost 5 gigahertz of spectrum for flexible use. Now, to put that in context, that is more spectrum than is currently used for mobile broadband by all mobile broadband providers in the United States combined. So this is a huge increase in supply. The FCC will also vote next week on opening up mid-band spectrum in the 2.5 gigahertz band. This is the largest contiguous band of spectrum below 3 gigahertz in the United States. So this also is a big opportunity for 5G. Also, on the mid-band spectrum front, later this year, the summer rather, we hope to approve the first commercial deployments in the 3.5 gigahertz band, and we intend to hold an auction of that band next year. And moreover, thanks to the reforms we adopted last year, carriers that win licenses in that auction can more efficiently deploy 5G in the 3.5 gigahertz band. In terms of low band, we're also continuing to study ways to make more efficient use of spectrum in the 900 megahertz range. Last year, the FCC started to explore new uses for that band, and based on the evidence that we have gained and the lessons we have learned, we are now proposing to make part of that band available for broadband, which will improve the consumer experience. Now let me shift from spectrum to wireless infrastructure, which was the second part of the 5G FAST plan. When it comes to 5G, infrastructure is essential, of course. We need to install hundreds of thousands of small cells, which is a huge increase in the number of antenna locations for our current networks. And that is why we reformed our historic preservation and environmental regulations, so that small cells are not put through the same regulatory burdens as 60-meter towers. And that is why we also took action to ensure that American cities cannot delay small cell deployments. We set a reasonable shot clock for cities to rule on small cell siting applications and a reasonable limit on the siting fees that those local governments can charge. And these reforms are working. In 2018, the number of wireless small cells that were deployed in the United States increased by more than 4 times, quadrupled, from 13,000 to more than 60,000. And hopefully we will see similar results here in Argentina, where I understand from my friend, Secretary and Dr. Huichi, that the Argentine Supreme Court made a decision along these lines. Finally, fiber, the third part of the 5G FAST plan. 5G, of course, isn't just about wireless. We also need very strong wired networks to carry all of this traffic once it is offloaded from the airwaves. And so here we have modernized our rules to encourage the deployment of optical fiber for backhaul. We've made it easier for carriers to transition from the fading copper networks of yesterday to the fiber facilities of tomorrow. And we ended utility-style broadband regulation that was inspired by rules developed in the 1930s. And here, too, our policies are working. In 2018, fiber was deployed to more new homes in the United States than in any year ever. And earlier this month, we learned that investment in the United States in broadband networks increased by over $3 billion, which was the second consecutive annual increase. And that is notable because infrastructure investment had declined in 2015 and 2016. So that's a sketch of what we are doing in the United States. But now I'd like to shift to what we can do together, juntos, how regional collaboration can help people across the Americas realize the promise of the digital age. When we talk about regional collaboration, We are talking partly about events like this, where we can come together to build relationships and share best practices. And over the past 2.5 years as chairman, I've enjoyed learning from and becoming friends with colleagues throughout this hemisphere. Whether it is meeting with my Central American peers at Comtelca, whether it is connecting with my Caribbean counterparts at Canto, or seeing you at international gatherings like GSMA in Barcelona. I always leave these talks invigorated and enlightened by what you have to say. And now, the World Radio Communication Conference is only 4 months away. WRC 19 is important to all of us in this room who are working to increase connectivity in our countries and to deliver the benefits of these new technologies to our citizens. It offers a great opportunity for our region to advance our shared goals and strategies. And by moving forward together toward international radio spectrum allocation and harmonization for next-generation terrestrial, mobile, and satellite services, we can help ensure that 5G, next-generation satellite services, and other emerging technologies soon become a reality. And to seize this opportunity, it is important that we work together, guided by our shared interests. As we head into WRC 19, I'm pleased to say that thanks to many people in this room, we are in a stronger position to make sure that the concerns of our region are respected on the international stage. Last year, at the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, we ended the long CTEL drought in regional representation among elected officials. We placed not one, but 2 wonderful candidates from the Americas. The region is in good hands with Uruguay's Mario Manovich as the director of the Radio Communication Bureau, and Doreen Bogdan-Martin of the United States as director of the Development Bureau. That's a good example of how, through unity of purpose, CTEL has become a vital voice for the Americas. And carrying that cooperative spirit into WRC 19 will be critical to getting access to the spectrum we all need to advance new technologies. I know that we are off to a great start with 24 inter-American proposals already agreed to, which is a record number at this stage in the process. Our priorities for the upcoming WRC in Egypt are the same priorities we have at home and for our region, and they are the same ones I highlighted earlier in my remarks: closing the digital divide and promoting 5G and other next-generation innovations. And our guiding principles as the United States approaches WRC 19 are threefold. First, we need to create a flexible regulatory framework that allows for continued growth of a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Second, we need to enable regional and global spectrum harmonization opportunities for all services, including broadcasting and Wi-Fi and mobile technologies and satellites, in order to create international economies of scale and roaming and interoperability, all of which will lower the cost for manufacturers and consumers. And third, we should ensure reasonable protections for incumbent users of the spectrum so that they can continue to operate and have enough certainty to invest in new technologies and expand coverage and deployment. And if we establish a flexible framework, if we harmonize spectrum policies, and if we set reasonable protections, we will drive technological innovation and investment throughout our region. All of us will be better off. Now, in terms of some of the specific issues the United States will be focusing on at WRC 19, here is a preview. The FCC does not pick winners and losers in our domestic marketplace. We believe that our domestic experience shows that we can and should be open to the possibility of a more flexible approach at WRC 19. Global harmonization no longer requires every single region to have identical spectrum allocations. Instead, harmonization can happen using radio tuning ranges. And these tuning ranges allow manufacturers to develop equipment that can operate across multiple bands within a contiguous range, while allowing regulators the flexibility to manage spectrum resources according to their unique domestic requirements. And for our part, the United States will be supporting the 24 gigahertz, 40 gigahertz, and 48 gigahertz tuning ranges at WRC 19. By placing an international mobile telecommunications, or IMT, identification in these ranges, it does not preempt or prioritize the spectrum for 5G over other services like satellite. It simply gives governments the flexibility to make those decisions for themselves. This is exactly what the FCC and other regulators have done domestically, giving some portions of spectrum to satellite while other portions go to mobile. And in addition, compared to low-band spectrum like 700 megahertz, propagation characteristics for millimeter wave spectrum make sharing much easier. And so, in most cases, international cross-border protections are largely unnecessary. Now, in the case of science satellites, it is important to protect their operations from harmful interference. But we also must avoid overprotecting them and then unnecessarily preventing new technologies from being developed and operating. For example, I am hopeful that our region can work together at CTEL this August in Ottawa to develop a protection limit that will make the most efficient use of the 24 gigahertz band for 5G, while still protecting passive sensors. Now, thankfully, the recent trend from other regions is encouraging, with the Arab Spectrum Management Group and the African Telecommunications Union endorsing reasonable limits. And I believe that the facts and the physics make a compelling case for our region to arrive at even less restrictive limits. At the FCC, we base our spectrum rules on sound engineering and the efficient use of the airwaves, not on unverified claims based on politics. And we believe this approach will help the 24 gigahertz band become a launch pad for the widespread deployment of 5G. Additionally, an IMT designation in the 50 gigahertz band with adequate protections of incumbent services can help make sure our region provides a pathway for the future growth of mobile services. Now, this band potentially represents over 2 gigahertz of contiguous spectrum that could be used to provide 5G services. In the United States, there are no co-channel incumbent operations that need to be accommodated or relocated. And I also would stress that we need to have the future in mind. As a region or even individually, we may not need that band immediately right now. But given the way that mobile data services are growing, we would be wise to prepare for the future. Another key focus for the WRC will be expanding the availability of Wi-Fi. And this unlicensed innovation helps to bridge the digital divide and make it easier for people to get online. To push for more unlicensed spectrum to get into the marketplace, the United States is looking to harmonize our domestic rules internationally by promoting higher-powered outdoor use in the 5150 to 5250 megahertz bands. Moving from the land to the sky, new satellite technologies have tremendous potential to connect the hardest to serve areas. Some satellite companies are already helping address this challenge, delivering affordable, high-throughput connectivity to rural and remote areas throughout the region. They will also play a part in the 5G ecosystem through backhaul, through residential broadband, and through IoT solutions. We are also especially supportive of non-geostationary satellite orbit, or NGSO, innovation. NGSO entrepreneurs such as OneWeb and SpaceX, Boeing and Kepler, O3b, and many others are pioneering high-speed, low-latency global broadband solutions. And we will have an opportunity at WRC 19 under Agenda Item 1.6 to consider regulatory improvements to permit expanded use by NGSO systems in the frequency bands 37.5 to 39.5 gigahertz, 39.5 to 42.5 gigahertz, 47.2 to 50.2 gigahertz, and 50.4 to 51.4 gigahertz for these satellite systems. And now I'll close my remarks with this. In my meetings with regulators and spectrum managers from this region and throughout the world, I've come to appreciate how every country faces particular difficulties. Every country has different priorities. Every country has different opportunities. Not every national spectrum table is going to be the same. But as a region, we have common challenges and common interests. And that means that if we stand together, we can rise together. CTEL and WRC 19 give us a chance to work jointly towards solutions for 5G, increased Wi-Fi usage, and connectivity through large satellite constellations. Our regional prosperity depends upon our regional unity. We see each of the agenda items for WRC as being part of a comprehensive, multi-technology approach to increasing the spectrum available for connecting the unconnected and delivering advanced services for our citizens. And that brings me back to the words of Pope Francis. There truly is beauty in the way that so many of us have journeyed so far to come together in the name of harnessing technology to lift up others. We may speak different languages and cherish different traditions, but we also have shared values and mutual respect. We are brothers and sisters at the end of the day. And so let us journey together to build a brighter digital future for all the people of the Americas. Thank you very much.